All right, so where to start? So a year ago, I stood before you. We were kind of just getting ready into the throes of the general election. Who saw that coming? I'm trying to think. Even a year ago, as Craig said, I've been with NHB for 26 years, all on the government affairs side. I've done my share of political campaigns, worked on the House side on Capitol Hill, and watched from the presidential election side. But last year was the strangest one I think any of us have ever seen. Certainly I've ever seen. Who would have thought that fateful June night when President Biden had the worst debate performance I think anybody ever had? Well, probably since Barack Obama's first debate performance or George W. Bush's first debate performance. And we forget that usually the sitting presidents have a big clunker that first night. They come in a little cocky, and the challenger comes in ready to rock, and there's always this kind of bloodletting right after the first debate. But this was unlike everything we saw, right? I mean, think about it. The party threw out the sitting president of the United States who was ready to run for re-election. We all have our opinions whether or not they should or shouldn't have, whether President Biden should have gracefully declined to run at all. But who would have thought that 6 weeks after that debate, we would have thought that President Biden pushed out, Vice President Harris ushered in, and then watched that peak where President Trump was riding high, or now former President Trump at the time riding high, and then Vice President Harris just took off, and looked like it was going to be, a blowout. And then he just closed better than she did. I remember thinking to myself, he's probably going to lose again, right? What fundamentally has changed in those 4 years? He's still Donald Trump. A lot of the reasons why people rejected him the second time around was, those were still there. But he just closed faster. I remember getting to kind of mid-October and thinking that she had run out of steam. And then, of course, we saw what happened. He's close to an electoral landslide as we're going to get in the current political climate. Swept all of the Great Lakes states. Obviously, Virginia didn't go, but Virginia, for a minute there was that. It was kind of purpley until, everybody knows I'm from Northern Virginia, until Northern Virginia decided to do what it does and lay the hammer down. And so here we are, a lot of optimism for a lot of the business community after the election. I know from the home building perspective, I travel all over the country, talk to members, and they were very excited. There was a lot of opportunity. They remember the deregulatory nature of President Trump's first term. The economy was better. Obviously, COVID was that final thing that he couldn't quite overcome, but a lot of optimism. The president gets inaugurated late January, mid to late January. And I will tell you, the last 3 months have been a year. It has been unlike anything I've ever seen. They came in more prepared than they did the first time. I think the general consensus was they weren't really sure they were going to win the first time, and it was a very clunky rollout with the administration the first term. This time, they came in prepared. It's been unbelievable. It is a lightning fast transition, a lightning fast first 100 days. And we've seen a lot of big things. The Elon Musk chainsaw thing, that's real. They're swinging sledgehammers there. I mean, they're breaking a lot of China, and they're going to rebuild it in the image that they want to have. And so what's that impact mean for us? A lot of that optimism I talked about after the election for our industry has waned. So if you all follow the NHB Wells Fargo Housing Market Index, we put it out every month, and it's a forward-looking metric of the optimism in the industry, and it's based off of traffic, it's based off of financing, it's based off of kind of what you think things look like 6 months down the road. And since the beginning of the year, for 4 months in a row, we've seen that number drop. Now, this past month, the April showing it ticked up one point to 40. Anything below 50 is, I would call it pessimistic. 50 is the break-even point. We've been down there for a few months now. End of the year, we were approaching 50, but we've retrenched quite a bit. The optimism is a little bit dimmer than it was. And why is that? Because, by all accounts, the home builders generally like President Trump. But what's gone on here that's created this pessimism? about the future of the industry? Well, we'll start with the economics of the moment, I think. We're going to be level this year when it comes to building permits. I'm sorry, housing starts. Last year in 2024, we built about 1 million single-family homes and about 250,000 multifamily units. We have to remember where we need to build in order to solve our housing crisis. So there's three components that make up demand in this country. Household formation, people having kids, getting married, partnering up. Two, replacing the older housing stock. We are now have more housing that's 50 years old than we've had any time in the past. The housing stock is aging, and there's a reason for that, of course. And then third is immigration, just net immigration into this country. In fact, if it wasn't for immigration in this country, we'd be in a population decline. Our birth rates have gotten less and less over the last decade or so. So immigration is a good thing. We'll talk a little bit about immigration policy, but immigration in general for the United States is a good thing. But those three drivers, we need to build about 1.5 million units a year. That's single and multifamily. We're not doing that. I just gave you our numbers for this year are going to be flat. So again, million single family units, around 200,000 to 300,000 multifamily units, which means we're behind. And multifamily is still lagging. I mean, multifamily builders in the room, we still have under construction today in multifamily the most units since the mid-1970s. Let's see, last year I think our metric was 1971. We had almost 1 million units under construction. So there was a big bubble of supply coming on the multifamily side, which should help with rent prices. But there is no financing behind it. There's going to be a trough coming up in multifamily for the next couple of years. I'm actually getting ready to go to a big multifamily conference we host next week. I will know a little bit more about the mood of those members. But generally, multifamily, again, have this bubble of supply followed by this trough of supply because the capital hasn't really flowed in to that sector yet. So we still have to iron out some things. We don't expect mortgage rates to fall below 6% until the end of 2026. 6 months ago was a much different prospect. We thought the end of 2025 was where we would finally see those low sixes. Now we're looking at the end of 2026. And why is that? Well, inflation still remains stubbornly high. Even though it's much lower than what we remember a couple of years ago, inflation is still hovering just below 3%. Came down this past month. It was a good reading. Everybody was very happy. But we're still not at that Federal Reserve metric of 2% for the inflation rate. And that last decimal point or two, it's all our fault. It's all shelter inflation. Shelter inflation continues to be around 5%. And we are the component of the last piece the stubbornly last decimal point that gets us down to 2%, gets us to that Fed target where maybe they feel a little bit more comfortable cutting their interest rates. So we've seen the Fed put a big pause. In fact, 3 or 4 months ago, we thought the Fed was going to cut 6 times this year. We're 2 meetings in, I think, 3 meetings in, and they haven't cut anything yet. And the prospect of them cutting is looking dimmer and dimmer. We're just in this weird phase right now, and a lot of it has to do with, again, shelter inflation. We're not building enough. We haven't built enough, quite frankly, since the Great Recession. We have not built to pace that 1.5 million units since the Great Recession. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I remember, because I've been here around long enough before I had more hair and a lot darker. I remember 2006, 2005, talking to members. Good times were never going to end. We're just going to keep the ball rolling. We were building 2 million units in 2004, an unsustainable pace. But nobody really thought that, right? No one ever looks over the horizon for the car crash. And guess what happened? 2008. And by 2009, hey, this will be okay, right? In 2010, hey, we're almost out of this, right? And we weren't. It was longer and deeper than any of us expected. And those who survived the Great Recession, the builders, what happened? They never got extended again. They learned a lesson, which was great. The housing finance system got better. We flight to quality, not quantity. And so we've never really built back to pace. Members who were building 50 homes a year in 2006 said, you know what, in 2015, 35 homes is just fine. I'm not extended, I'm doing fine. That's really, plus home prices accelerated, right? So that's really what's happened. We've just never gotten back to the pace we need to do. We touched it briefly in 2020 and 2021, the post-COVID boom, touched it briefly there. But now we sagged back as inflation took over, interest rates got high, and the market stalled. We'll remain stalled for this year and next. So that's the challenge that faces us in the short term. So let's talk a little bit about the policies ahead of us. I'm going to start with labor for a minute, just because all of those, the great work that the foundation does in handing out those checks. Workforce is the largest the biggest drag on our industry over the next decade. It's not interest rates, it's not tariffs, it's not the economy necessarily. It's going to be labor. While the labor crisis in our industry has eased, we are still consistently about 200,000 jobs short month after month, and have been so for about a decade. We are just not doing a great job of replacing our older, skilled workforce. We all know this, right? We're trying to get more and more kids in the skilled trades. We're trying to remind people that the skilled trades should not be plan B. How many times you hear, Jimmy couldn't make it in college, so he's a plumber. Well, why don't we turn around and say, hey, Jimmy couldn't make it as a plumber, and he decided to go to college. That's the story we have to tell. We have to get our kids to know that, guidance counselors, parents, and we're starting to see a sea change. We have unwound the skilled trades in this country over decades. Since the 1970s, we have told people the only way to be successful in this country is a 4-year college degree. And now we've devalued the college degree, where now everybody gets a bachelor's, and guess what they do? They go get another degree. They go get a finishing degree, because that's got to separate them in the workforce. We have got to find a way to infuse the trades with more, I don't want to say glamour, but we've got to show people that this is a tremendous pathway. And we all know, for those of us who had work done in your homes or work in this sector, you can make a really, 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 really good living if you're doing the trades right now. And you're tomorrow's entrepreneurs. You might be learning a skill today, you're on a crew tomorrow, then you start your own company. That's the story we have to tell. And in 10 or 15 years from now, you're probably not even working. You got 3 or 4 crews on the road. You're on your bass boat and you come into shore just to price a job out. That's the story we need to tell. And that's a story we have to tell as an industry that is critically important, because this will be the biggest drag on our industry. And that's why immigration policy is so important. We've seen I get asked a lot of questions in the press. Hey, did you know that President Trump was going to deport all these people? I said, has anybody watched the campaign for the last 2 years? He ran on it. He said he was going to do it, and why everybody is surprised that he's actually doing these things. And so what we're trying to communicate to the administration is, can we, let's stick with the worst first. We've seen that. I don't know if we can say that's worked out as well. But let's start there. But remind them that this idea of deporting 15 million people is impractical at best, improbable at worst. Impossible is probably the right word. And this is the moment where we as an industry need to come together. 1/3 of our workforce is non-native born. 1/3 of our workforce. So we have to stand up for those who do our jobs for us, who work in this industry, who do great work. We have to stand up. It's time for us to lead on what needs to happen in this country, which is immigration reform. Comprehensive immigration reform. 4 pillars for NAHB. And I would say it's the same 4 pillars across the Washington, D.C. area when I think of the stakeholders and all the industry representation in Washington, D.C. 4 pillars. First, secure the border. I think everybody can agree with that. Let's secure the border. Because if we secure the border and we come up with number 2, which is a way for people to come into this country legally that is easy to do, meaning a visa system for our industry in particular, not fighting for ag visas or seasonal visas, but a visa system for the construction sector, where if people want to come into this country and work for us and with us, we should make it easy for them. Third, we all have a responsibility as employers in this country to hire work-eligible people. So an E-Verify system. Right now, there's a 10-state pilot program. I think we've had it for about 20 years. It is time to make it permanent so that when you all have somebody come on your job site and they've got a card that says they are work eligible, you have the complete confidence that they are. You can bounce their information off a national database, and you can hire those people with confidence. Now, I am not a big fan of government databases. If you remember President Trump's speech to the joint session, don't call it the State of the Union. Speech to the joint, he listed all, there's still somebody on the Social Security rolls that's 300 years old or something like that. So I don't necessarily trust a government database. We still send millions of dollars in checks to dead people every April 15th. So the other part of that is your responsibility is that the government has a responsibility. If you're doing the right thing and the government database is wrong, you're held harmless. But we have a responsibility as an industry to make sure that we are hiring work eligible people. And finally, pillar number 4, we've got to find a pathway to legalization, citizenship, and I don't care what we call it. Amnesty is a dirty word on the right. It gets to the end of the longest line, pay a fine, dirty words on the left. I don't care. But we have got to have a serious conversation about the undocumenteds in this country. It is, like I said, improbable, impossible to deport them all. But let us find a way to bring them out of the shadows, have comfort working in our industry, and working in this country as all 4 pillars. And we have to start talking about that. Now, there will be a big debate about whether this president will want to do something like that. I have long maintained that he is the only one who can do it. President Bush tried it, George W. Bush tried it, Barack Obama tried. Actually, George W. Bush got really, really close on immigration reform. And naturally, the fringes of the parties end up crushing it like they do with so many things. But President Trump has turned the volume on immigration up so high. It goes to 11. So high that I think he's the only one. Thank you for lately getting that Spinal Tap joke. Woo. I seriously hard there. I was like, oh my God, you guys are all my age, if not older. No offense. Thank you for the smattering of applause. Whew, I'm gonna be careful. I get yelled at by my staff for too many jokes like that. Like, no one gets your stuff anymore. All right, now we're way off topic. So sometimes they're just for me. Sometimes I tell my kids this, like my daughter will make a joke. Sorry, this is a weird deal. And she said, no one laughed. I'm like, sometimes they're just for you. I know I'm funny, so that's okay. I'm good. Sorry, is this being recorded? Sorry. Can we edit that out on the phone? Where was I? Spinal Tap. President Trump, he has turned the volume up so high on this issue politically that I believe he is the only one who can dial it back down and make a deal. And that's what we're trying to do. We have to tell the economic story of immigration. It is a human story. I have heard heartbreaking stories from our members who have work crews that have not shown up to work, who won't send their children to school because they're afraid that ICE is waiting in the parking lot to follow that child home to catch mom, dad, or grandma. Heartbreaking stories about this. But we, from our industry, need to tell the economic story. Who is going to build the houses in this country that we so desperately need? Because we have not done a good job of educating and bringing the next generation of contractors in. So until we do, we need to look over our borders for our workforce. And so we need to tell that story. So as you're all talking to the press, you're at your town halls or county commissions, and you talk about the headwinds of housing, labor is something we need to talk about. Second headwind, and everybody's favorite word, big, beautiful tariffs. We all love tariffs. Most beautiful word in the dictionary. Sorry. This is being, I'm in big trouble. Let's talk about tariffs. So our surveys that we've done with our members over the last couple of months as we've gotten into this tariff cycle is we've kind of crested $10,000. The anticipation that tariffs will increase the cost of a new home by about $10,500. The funny thing is, we really don't know this yet. And yet, all our building product manufacturers out there, love you all, appreciate everything that you do. I want to thank you all for the letters that I have received from our members on January 22nd, so the day after the president was inaugurated, saying we think tariffs are coming, so we're going to raise rates between 6 and 10% in the second quarter. Stay tuned. That's a real impact, right? Tariffs are in effect, some higher than others. Obviously the Chinese tariffs are the poster child, but everybody's got a 10% tariff. Steel and aluminum from Canada's got 25%. There isn't a room in the House that is not affected by these tariffs. In 2024, we used over $200 billion in building materials to build homes and apartments in this country. 7% of those came from overseas. It is going to have an impact on what we do. I am all for increasing domestic production. I believe that our industry would buy every stick of lumber, they would buy every light fixture, they'd buy every hinge, they'd buy every nail built in America or made in America. The reality is we don't. Just like I talked about labor, until we have enough internal US supply, we have to go over our borders. The same thing goes for building materials. And we have to recognize that. Sometimes it's because we just don't do enough of it here, whether it's environmental laws, labor laws, that the cost of having US production is expensive. There's a reason why things have been offshored to many, many different countries. When it comes to lumber in particular, we do not cut enough timber and mill enough lumber in this country to meet demand. We get 30% of our lumber from across our borders. 70% of that comes from Canada. Why? Because we're not cutting enough of our own timber here. There's a couple things. Our public or private landowners aren't milling enough. Number two, and this is the real reason, we have not cut enough timber off our national forests. The national forests have been designed to be a renewable resource for lumber and timber in this country for generations. In late 1990s, before President Clinton shut down a lot of the Northwest forest, there's no infrastructure for roads. We used to cut about 12 billion board feet of timber off of our national forests. In President Trump's first term, he doubled production to 4 billion board feet. Guess where that extra 10 billion comes from? Probably Canada, right? We have to tell that story too. Again, I am all for milling every stick of lumber we use in the United States. Absolutely. But we're not doing it for a variety of reasons. We need to solve those reasons, but it's going to take a long time. So until we do that, we need to go somewhere else, because I don't know if anybody's checked, but we're still building homes the same way we did since we crawled out of the caves generations ago. We built them stick built, right? That's the way it is. As much as technology is out there to do more panelization, it hasn't caught on yet. In some places it has, but we haven't got scale yet. Either customers or builders aren't comfortable using it, they're not familiar with it. So why would a company invest in new panelization factories? And until we invest in more panelization factories, it's going to be hard for builders to see the uptake. We've got to solve that problem, but we're still building homes the way we did for generations. And until we solve that problem from a technology perspective, we need to continue milling more lumber here. I hope to see an uptick on our national forests over the next several years. But we have to remember, it's a renewable crop. Let us cut it, let us replant it, and let us use it. That is going to be I think, a real issue. But tariffs, and I've got bad news, even though I think we've done an excellent job keeping the White House away from lumber tariffs in general on these reciprocal tariffs. Currently, Canadian lumber has a 14.5% tariff on it. That is going to go up in this fall. It's almost 35%. That is I know, I was like, did somebody gasp? Awesome. You're supposed to gasp. Oh my God, I can't believe it. That is on a different track from the tariffs we're talking about since President Trump took office. There's a completely different Commerce Department track. It's based off of anti-dumping investigations. So we expect lumber to go much higher, Canadian lumber to go much higher in the fall. So we've done a good job of reminding the president, we don't need additive tariffs. We're already paying 14.5%. We don't need another 25% on top of that. So we talk to the White House regularly, and by regular I mean pretty much every other day. I mean, we have a very good relationship. The president understands what an important industry this is. He comes from this industry. Now he builds a lot differently than you all do. build big golden towers in Manhattan. But he understands this industry. In fact, if you think about it, on inauguration night, he hosted a series of executive orders. One of them was about housing and lowering the cost of housing. But it was also about increasing the supply of housing. Because for the first time in my career, there was a presidential campaign where housing was at the central focus of the economic pitches of both candidates. I have my entire career, every 4 years, I have wished for this moment. We've tried and tried and tried with campaigns to get them to talk about housing and home building. And for the first time, both candidates, with a lot of crossover, talked about housing and housing affordability. But it wasn't just affordability. It wasn't just complaining about the cost of housing. They both agreed, the only way to solve the housing crisis in this country is to build more housing. Build, baby, build. That is the only way we're going to do it. We have to build our way out of it. We can no longer give taxpayer dollars to people to help them afford an already expensive product. It is time to lower the cost of the product by putting more supply on there. I was terrible at economics. I'm a political science major. I had to take an economics class. I'm terrible at it, but I do remember the supply and demand curve. More supply meets demand will lower housing prices. That's the way we have to do it. The only way we're going to do it. The president understands this. So we have a pretty good argument when we say, hey, immigration policy kind of hurting us, goes against your executive order. Hey, these tariffs, they're going to hurt a little bit. Can we have a conversation about it? They are listening. But again, he's doing what he said. If anybody said, oh, did you know he was going to raise tariffs? Again, if you're paying attention, he was. Now, the hard part, I think, and this leads to this uncertainty in our market right now, is the whipsaw effect of the tariffs are on, the tariffs are off. The tariffs are off Europe, but they're on China to 145%. I just read this morning that he's thinking of lowering the Chinese tariffs. Okay, I'll tell you what, I'll take 145%, let's just stick with it. That's the hard part in the short term. And if anybody's planning on retiring in the next 2 years, good luck on your stock portfolio. But hang in there. I think we're going to be okay in a few years. That's what he's paying attention to, right? He's mad at Jerome Powell. He saw that he wanted to fire the Federal Reserve chairman. Cannot do that. And even if he could, I think it's 9 governors. There's 9. You'd have to fire all 9 governors because they act as a board and they're generally in lockstep with each other. So it's not just one. You'd have to fire the whole Federal Reserve Board, and that gets really. Now you want to send the stock market and the bond market into tatters. Yeah, let's not do that. So he even walked that back yesterday. I would never fire him. Ha ha ha. Just kidding. They're trying to calm the markets, which I think is really important for us. We need to send a message to our bondholders. It's just a really interesting time, and I love this moment. I thrive on the chaos of moments. If it was just normal Trump, it'd be boring. I mean, we can debate what normal Trump looks like. But this has been really interesting, especially for our industry. I talked about the political moment we enjoyed in the election. Both candidates made housing supply the central part of their economic pitches. It is now time for us to take the political moment and translate it into a policy moment. All the great work you're doing, Andrew. I loved your talk this morning with the local presidents about all the work you're doing. We have broken housing in this country. Local governments have broken housing in this country by making it too expensive and too long. They have put NIMBYs ahead of housing. They have put other industries in front of housing. It is time that we elect and get people at the local level who are going to put housing first. Everybody knows we have a housing crisis. Everybody knows we need to solve it. Everybody knows we can know how to solve it. Maybe some differing on the edges, but now it's time to put housing first. And that's the message I want to leave with you. Participate. When you go to, if your executive officer calls you and says, hey, we've got a hearing with one of our members, they will send 50 NIMBYs to counter everything. We'll send one person, one builder, maybe 2. We need to show up in force and explain to everybody that if you want more housing, This is the only way to do it. This is the only industry that will do it. There are many of us, I know our realtor friends are in the room, they will gladly speak for what housing is in this country, what home building should be in this country. There's only one industry that's going to do it. There's only one industry that's going to build our way out of this supply crisis, and it is this industry, the men and women in this room. So let us stand up for ourselves. Put a quick plug in. Come to Washington, D.C. on June 11th. It's our legislative conference. It's just right up the road, 90 miles, 92 miles from here to be exact. But come up there, talk to your representatives, be part of what we're doing, walk the halls in Congress to reinforce to lawmakers at the federal level. Here, obviously, a wonderful job at the state level, and in your local communities. Time to put housing first. If you want people to live in your communities and attract businesses, we need to build more housing, and we need to build it faster. So I want to thank you. I'd love to take some questions. We covered a lot of ground there. I didn't even get to the good part. I talked about headwinds. There's a tax bill coming. I'm going to wrap with this, I promise, Craig. There's a tax bill coming. That tax bill will impact all of you as corporations or whether you're organized as small businesses. Pay attention to that. We will be very active in that. And as individuals and as your customers, it is going to set our tax policy in this country for most of the next decade. Really important policy, and that will help bring some stability to the economy. And deregulation. President Trump has run on a deregulatory environment. We've already seen him make some significant strides in regulations that impact our industry. I expect more. I do not believe that we know what the Trump economy looks like. It may be I talked about the uncertainty and the bumpiness. We've seen that. In 6 months from now, it looks a whole lot different. Tax bill, tariffs and trade deals, immigration policy maybe moderates a little bit. I hate to use the word moderates. And then deregulation will take effect and start to gain steam. Let's see what the economy looks like in 6 months. Let's give the president a little bit of grace as he swings that sledgehammer and breaks things and starts to reassemble them. I think our economy looks a lot better, which means we are going to be poised to accelerate into 2026 and build all those homes we need. Thank you for your attention today. It's been a great pleasure. Look forward to taking some questions. Yes, sir.
So the last Trump term, the rules regarding taxes and LLCs was problematic after Virginia created a loophole for our way to. What do we think happens there, or do we know anything about that?
It
used to be that you could deduct your taxes for Virginia or state level LLC from your federal, and then that was taken away. Virginia created like a loophole where it can pay your taxes ahead of time as an LLC.
Is this the state and local tax deduction?
Yeah.
So state and local tax deduction, trust me, in Northern Virginia, we're all getting a little hit with it. There's a 10% cap, right? I think, right, business got hit too. He has vowed to do something with it, raise the SAL cap. There's a marriage penalty. So if you're a single filer, it's $10,000. If you're married, it's $10,000. Maybe they just double it to 20 for married filers. But he has vowed to do something on that as a New Yorker, well now a Floridian, but as a New Yorker. But number two, with the margins so tight in Congress, there's enough of the SALT caucus, that Northeastern Illinois, California delegation, where they're going to hold their feet to the fire. So I expect there to be some relief when it comes to the state and local tax deductions. Maybe not the full, what we used to have, full deduction, but some relief that should make it a little bit easier.
Actually. And this might be Robert Deed's question.
It's okay. We you know my deal, right? Rob's our chief economist. He doesn't talk politics. I don't talk economics. Happy to take this question.
With all the government cuts and of course, Virginia, we're feeling it more because how much is that going to affect our economy? How much government spending contributes to the GDP?
Yeah, a lot. Home building is about 16%. I think the federal government's probably more than that. Just think about the Pentagon, right? The largest employer. I think it's the largest employer in the country. We're pretty close to it. I do think it's going to have some impacts. I know just personally, we have friends. Our kids go to school with parents that have lost their jobs or about to lose their jobs. I don't know yet. We're going to see. There's a lot of court cases about what he can and cannot do, who he can and he cannot fire. So I don't think we've seen the end of this. Obviously the union has a big say in it, a lot of collective bargaining. So we're not quite there yet. But I would imagine there's going to be a significant impact on our issue now, on our industry, which means that we could start to free up some of that locked existing supply if people feel like they have to move because they've got a new job, they've lost their job. I don't want to find solace in other people's misery, but we've got to be prepared for it. Same thing with Maryland. Obviously, Prince George's County has the largest concentration of federal workers, but I suspect there will be an impact. Yes, sir.
With tariffs and also on the other side, the 232 investigations, do you think those are going to affect our industry as a whole? Or?
So the president actually has 232 is the national security investigations on tariffing. So he actually launched a 232 investigation on lumber from Canada. So I don't know about base housing. I don't know anything about it. I guess that's the one thing where we're not building planes out of wood anymore, haven't since World War I. And we don't build ships out of wood anymore. So I guess it would be base housing. I don't know where a national security determination would come in when it comes to lumber in particular. But steel and aluminum, he's used that in the past. So we're watching it very carefully. We've weighed in on that with the Commerce Department and talked about how it's unnecessary. I think, believe it or not, I think the one thing that does help us is the new countervailing duty investigation where Canadian lumber tariffs are going to go up to 35%. As much as I hate it, I think that's going to help keep us from some of these larger tariffs. Like, lumber's taken care of in that quarter. All right. Thank you all very much. Appreciate your time. Thank you.